Hi, my name's Ollie Bragg. I'm a third year pre-med student at the University of Wollongong, and this semester I was enrolled in a subject called the social determinants of Indigenous health. Um, and I've been asked to do a reflection on what I learnt and what are some of the outcomes of um, health access for Aboriginal people. In terms of what I knew going into this subject, obviously there were a lot of different themes week on week that my tutor Nadia uh, talked us through. Um, and at the heart of it all was these are adverse events or adverse, this is a negative impact on Aboriginal people, and how does this affect the health outcomes of Aboriginal people in Australia? Within this reflection, I just wanted to start by talking about the social determinants of health. Um, Obviously, this presentation we've been asked to talk about three key areas: children and young people, the role of cultural determinants, and the evolution of public health policy within Australia. Um, all these factors, I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've learnt over this semester is that all of these, there's so many factors that go into determining the health outcomes of Aboriginal people and just society more broadly also. Um, but in terms of Aboriginal people, there are many, many themes that go back um, hundreds and hundreds of years that there is a very, very clear link between the history of Aboriginal people and their um, plight and the horrific things that were done by the British when it was colonized, and how those years and centuries of being an oppressed people have led to a very distinct health and resource gap for Aboriginal people, which is still um, going today. In terms of some of the key influences on health outcomes, at the forefront of this semester was education. Um, I learnt that education is probably the most vital um, social determinant, particularly things like health literacy. Um, when you can understand and even process what's happening with your own body and what a health professional is telling you or relaying you, it becomes all the more easier for you to understand your own body. Um, Obviously, access to education is often limited, which affects, again, those long term prospects of health. Family support was also very crucial, particularly in um, when we were talking about mental health of Aboriginal people, particularly young people. Um, Things like uh, unpacking the family and community dynamics of Aboriginal people. I learned that there's a very, very strong sense of community, and that it very, very often extends outside of the uh, nuclear family dynamic, and often it you Aboriginal people are able to lean on their community. And thirdly, obviously, the impact of that resource gap definitely impedes Aboriginal health outcomes. We talked a lot about uh, policy and things like closing the gap, the Torres Strait Islander and Aboriginal Health Plan, the Indigenous Advancement Strategy, and a bunch of other plans that um, have definitely gone in some way in helping, but there is a clear need for more policy and policy that is aligned with Aboriginal people and also comes directly from Aboriginal people. Um, in terms of the cultural determinants of health, um, I wanted to talk about um, things like traditional practices, language, and connection to country. Um, when we think about the social determinants of health and health as a whole, in the Western idea, there isn't too much leeway. It's very driven, but throughout this semester, there was a lot of emphasis on the fact that Aboriginal people gain a lot of uh, health and almost um, soulfulness and spirituality from keeping those ties to traditional practices and language and their connection to country, and a huge emphasis on the importance of culture within Aboriginal people's health outcomes. When we look at the evolution of public health policy, I'm going to have to go quite quickly, but we can see that it has come quite far. It's obviously not at a point where we can be proud of, but I think that the uh, in the 1970s there was an introduction of the first national health policy, and when we keep moving along, the national health strategy came along. Then in the 1990s, there was a launch of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health Framework, which again reflected on that importance of being culturally safe. Into the 2000s, when the Closing the Gap initiative started, which again looked at trying to reduce health inequities. And moving into the 2010s and to the present, there have been continued efforts to incorporate Aboriginal voices in health. Unfortunately, things like the Aboriginal Voice to Parliament were not entirely successful. But as we look forward and I reflect on it myself, I think the number one thing for myself that I've learned throughout the semester and how I will try and apply it to my life as I go on is that everything is connected to health, and I need to place much more of an emphasis on education. Um, yes, for myself, I want to continue learning about how to be culturally safe, how to um, best inform myself of how to um, treat, inform, and um, be the best health professional that I can for Aboriginal people, and to just know that there is a lot of learning to be done and there's a lot of healing to be done between Aboriginal people and the rest of Australia. But I think that public health policy also um, definitely needs to be more refined. But again, it all comes down to education for myself. And when I begin to become more educated as a health professional, hopefully I'm able to impart some of that knowledge to people around me so we can further emphasize those culturally safe policies and improve health outcomes for Aboriginal people.